beat. With me, your man, Louie T, here with a quick network update, essentially. Look, I feel like a fugitive the last couple of days. Feel like I've been on a run, like somebody's chasing me or something. I've just been going here, I've been going there. I haven't had a chance to actually kind of sit down and just catch myself. This Thanksgiving weekend has been nuts. Obviously this is not my normal setup. I'm not in the office. I'm at my parents' house. My old room. You can see the fat head in the background and all of that good stuff. But I had issues with the audio on my laptop for some reason. The drivers weren't updated, and then this webcam that I was trying to use, it was shutting down all of the audio on my computer, so I just had to plug it out. I'm actually on the camera that comes with the laptop, which is why it looks so grainy and hostage video-like. But nonetheless, wanted to chop it up with y'all real quick and talk about the happenings of yesterday. I haven't actually weighed in on everything. You guys already know the news. It broke yesterday. It felt like something had to happen after getting blown out 45-10 to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I didn't think anything would. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought they were going to do something, because I didn't. But are you happy? I'm going to ask you guys that. Are you happy? They gave you somewhat of a peace offering here, right? This was a sacrificial lamb. They gave you something to chew on to make you feel good, because a lot of you were screaming something had to be done. Are you happy? Because I don't feel any different today than I did yesterday, than I did the day before that, or the day before that. This doesn't do anything for me. For some of you, maybe you're excited. Ooh, Jack Del Rio and Brent Vieselmeyer, the coach they call Coach Veach, fired. He was the secondaries coach last year. He was the safeties coach. They, moved on from Chris Harris, who went to Tennessee to take a similar role that he had here in Washington. And they promoted Coach Veach to DBs coach, from safeties coach to DBs coach. And it didn't work out. And we could talk about that, and we will here in a second. But Jack Del Rio was the main name that everybody knows. Defensive coordinator, has been here for the 4 years that Ron has been here. And so he finally makes a move. It kind of feels scapegoatish. I said this when the Bills fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. Who's going to take the weight, right? Who's going to take the weight? Somebody's got to take it. And in the Bills case, it wasn't going to be their head coach, Sean McDermott. And right now, in this case, it's not going to be Ronald Rivera. So, shit runs downstream, as they say, right? And I saw this coming at halftime. I didn't pick up on the cues. The cues were there. And, when I do my whole psychology thing, one of the biggest things is taking cues that are being given to you, whether it's body language, things that are said, interactions between individuals. Those are things that usually gives you cues, social cues, if you will. And Ronald at halftime, this is the guy that you're getting blown out by the Bears, and you don't say a word to your team, right? There's so many games in which shit isn't going well, and he doesn't address anything at halftime. At halftime of the Thanksgiving game, he goes out of his way, does Ronald, to say that the defense has to be better, which they did. They were awful in the first half. No one's debating that. But they have been awful all year long. So, all of a sudden now, they got to play tighter in the secondary. They got to come up and they got to challenge these receivers. All of a sudden, he's animated about the lack of defensive pressure and the lack of the cornerbacks being aggressive in attacking the Cowboys receivers. All of a sudden, now it's a big problem, as if it hasn't been an issue all season long. Okay. Now he was setting the table for Jack to be the fall guy. And I missed that. And I should have, because I'm like, when he said it in the moment, it didn't register to me that anything was off. It just registered as, yes, the defense sucks. And yeah, they're playing too far off. But this is what they do all the time. So what makes Thanksgiving Day and the performance that we saw in the first half that didn't give us a chance any different? And it wasn't anything different. It was just Ron setting the table for what was to come after the game. He already knew what he was going to do post-game if this thing went off the rails. And it did. Okay, he wasn't going to fire Eric Bieniemy. He himself wasn't going to be fired. But you know what he could do? He could fire the defensive backs coach, Brent Vieselmeyer, and he could fire the defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio. Those could be the two fall guys. I mean, again, what we're essentially talking about is a means to an end. You guys do realize this. Like, Ronald isn't going to be here in a month and a half's time from now. So you firing the defensive coordinator is just a precursor to you yourself being fired in a month from now. But that's nor here nor there. The fans were clamoring for blood. They wanted a head on a stick. So they had to offer up something. Josh Harris and company knew they had to give the fans something. Couldn't just sit back and do nothing after another ass thrashing within the division. You know, couldn't just sit back and let this one slide. Got to do something because the fans are upset. So you fire Jack Del Rio. I hope you're happy. I mean, I don't feel any different. And I don't think the defense is going to look any different. You know, what is Ronald going to do? He hasn't called defense in how long? Almost a decade. What do you think he's going to do? Think he's going to just magically wave a wand and going to fix this defense? So now he's supposed to be taking over the play calling. What did he effing do? What is that going to do? We're still going to be terrible. We're still going to give up big plays. If he thought he could fix the defense himself, you don't think he would have tried that sooner? In Carolina, when the thing was going off the rails and Eric Washington was his defensive coordinator after two straight defensive coordinators got jobs, Sean McDermott got a job with Buffalo, and then Steve Wilkes got a job with Arizona. You don't think, and Eric Washington got the next defensive coordinator job, and he was stinking it up, and then Ronald took over? You don't think if Ronald thought he could fix this, he wouldn't have done it already? I mean, this is trash. All they did was offer us garbage to shush us up, which, again, I don't give a shit because none of the stuff that they're doing now is going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things 2 months from now when we're trying to rebuild this thing from the ground up with a new GM, a new coach, head coach, and a new staff, right? None of this is going to matter. Which is why I was like, so many of you want something done for the sake of having it done. What is it really going to do? We're still going to give up 30-plus points to the Dolphins next week. We're still going to get our brains bashed in next week, heading into the bye at 4-9. What does this change? Nothing. We're still not going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. You think Casey Tuill is magically going to be this dynamic pass rusher all of a sudden next week because Ron Rivera took over as the defensive play caller? No. So what difference does it make? I mean, some of you guys are funny because you're all excited about them firing Jack. Finally, they fired Jack Del Rio. Okay, now what? Okay, you got what you wanted. They fired Jack Del Rio. Now what? Just if this were Ron Rivera, okay, they fired Ron. Now what? Defense still stinks. Offensive play caller is still inconsistent. We still don't have a new head coach yet. We still don't have a general manager in here that we think is going to be able to right the ship. So what difference does it make? This is what I've been trying to explain to everybody. I don't really understand why everybody was so fixated on fire somebody, fire this guy, because none of this is going to matter. We still aren't a good football team. This roster still isn't in a good spot. The guys that are ultimately going to be making the decisions aren't even here yet. What difference does it make? You fired a guy for the sake of firing a guy because somebody had to be fired so the fan base could be pacified. I don't really know why there was this, which is why I didn't even come out with a video yesterday, even though I was all over the place. I wasn't even home. I wasn't even in a physical location yesterday. I was just moving yesterday. But even if I had been in a physical location other than my office, if I were at home, I would have made a video. But I'm not at home, obviously. You guys know that. But if I were at my parents' house yesterday, I still probably wouldn't have made a video if I was just sitting around. Because honestly, this didn't move the needle for me. I'm sorry, it just didn't. I would love to sit here and tell you Jack got what he deserved. He's been a mid-defensive coordinator for 4 years, blah, 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 blah. I would love to tell y'all that. But the fact of the matter is we already knew Jack was mid probably 2 years ago. Last year, there was this resurgence, but I credited that, and I told you guys, which is why I told you before the season started, the one thing I was nervous about. Wasn't nervous about the offensive line, although I probably should have been a little bit more nervous. But I told you I wasn't sold on the offensive line, but I wasn't as nervous as some of you were. And they fixed the offensive line enough for this offense to function. It's still not a good unit by any stretch of the imagination. And a lot of work still needs to be done to it. But I wasn't as concerned about the offensive line. I wasn't concerned about the offense. Maybe I should have been a little bit more concerned about the offense. But I was really concerned about this defense. And a lot of people, what are you talking about? This is the top 10 defense last year. I'm like, you understand the schedule is going to be tougher this year, right? You understand we're going to be playing better quarterbacks, better offensive groups this year. Last year, I felt like, just like 2020, it was a byproduct of who we were playing. We played poor teams. We played the AFC South last year, right? We played bad quarterbacks last season. It allowed this defense to look much better than what it really, truly was. And so we took advantage of that. And not to say that the defense didn't play well at times, but we also caught some breaks. And I've gone through that with you guys in past streams over the last 6 to 7 months about how Green Bay dropped passes and didn't convert in situations that were there for them to convert, and they just didn't execute. Like games like that, you know, the Colts dropping a wide open pass at the end of the game that would have probably put them in field goal range. Remember, they fumbled twice, you know, in that game. They dominated us offensively in that game, but yet we still found a way to win because we created turnovers and they made mistakes. That was the theme of last year. It wasn't because this defense was any good. It's because the other teams weren't playing well, and we took advantage of that. So Jack has been mid pretty much since he got here. So again, him being fired this year doesn't change anything. This defense has been mid since he got here. Okay, even with all the changes, even with the guys that they went out and got in free agency that did or did not work, it's been mid. So firing Jack at this point doesn't really do anything for me. And it really shouldn't do anything for you, but I can't tell you how to feel, you know? But I'm not in here doing a rain dance, you know, because Jack's been fired or Brent Vieselmeyer was caught in the crossfire. I will tell you this, though. Over the last about month or so, I have been pondering over the removal of former defensive backs coach Chris Harris, and you know whether he just decided he wanted to move on, he wanted a better opportunity than here in Washington, or it was a mutual parting of the ways, or they just decided to move on from him. Whatever the case, or he just decided this isn't the spot for me, I need to go somewhere else. Whatever the case may be, they missed his presence, and a lot. It was funny because some of you thought that he didn't really earn the credit that he was being given, because a lot of us felt like this guy's got the juice. And he's got this energy that he's got about himself. And, you know, the players seem to respond to him. Former player in the league. I always think that former player in the league thing is something that isn't necessarily a prerequisite to being a good coach, but it definitely helps, I think. Just being able to play off the experience of playing in the NFL. I think it helps. But whatever the case may be, it just felt like he was the right man for the job here in Washington. And maybe he didn't think he could grow with the team, the organization being in the state that it was in. Maybe he needed to go somewhere else that was a little bit more stable. This is why he went to Tennessee. I don't know. But losing him, I don't think we talked about that enough this offseason, because the defensive backs room, I felt like the players regressed this year in the back end. You know, not that they were ever great. And, you know, we talk about communication all the time, and that was the problem in the first 2 years of Jack's defense. Thought year 3, though, last year, you know, you can say what you want about the defense. I felt like the back end was way better last year. Like a lot of the issues we had felt like kind of stemmed more from the front seven, lack of pressure at times, and then the linebacker play in particular. I felt like the defensive backs actually weren't too bad last season, and felt like they took a massive step back. And I guess that's why Coach Veach kind of got caught in the middle of all of this, because there has been a regression in the secondary, I feel. And you know, some of it could be, you know, hoping that your first round pick comes in and plays a little bit more consistent than he did this year. But there's a number of, you know, fingers that can be pointed in different directions. I don't want to just point them at Coach Vieselmeyer. You know, at the end of the day, this defense wasn't good. The secondary was a part of that. Felt like they regressed more than any other group on the defense. And so I guess he was a byproduct of that. And so he had to go. But everybody's going to go in a month and a half's time from now. So what difference does it make? They just, like I said, this felt like, you know, a peace offering from Josh Harris to the fan base. Like, hey, I know you're mad. I know you're upset. So here you go. All right, I'm going to offer you up a couple of heads, sacrificial heads that you can have, that you can put on your pitchfork, and so you don't have to get your torches out. Okay, you can put the torches down. I know you're mad and upset, but here's a head that you can put on a stick that you can have to appease you as we try to finish out this season the best way we can. So what this essentially says to me is Ron isn't going to be fired in season. So you can stop asking for that. This is the last thing that's going to be done in season. Okay. They're not going to fire the defensive coordinator and then turn around and fire the head coach. So this was the last firing you're going to get in season this year. This is their sacrificial lamb and them trying to appease the fan base and pacify you and make you feel better about the final 5 games of the season, which for me, it doesn't do anything. But I wasn't the one clamoring for someone to be fired other than Ron. If it wasn't going to be Ronald, it wasn't going to move the needle for me, because the only thing you could kind of find out maybe down the stretch is any of these guys, and we already know who Jack is as a head coach. He doesn't need another opportunity in this league. But is Eric Bieniemy a leader of men? And I don't really know if his personality, fits, which is why he hasn't become a head coach, I think. And we're starting to see all the reasons why teams continuously passed on this guy as a head coach. It sucks because I hate to beat another man up and kill his opportunity to be a head coach before he even gets it. But you're starting to see why he never got that opportunity, and it is what it is. I think his personality isn't that much different than maybe Jim Harbaugh's, right? Which is why he's never been able to really keep a job more than 5-6 years at a time, because his personality is abrasive and it rubs people the wrong way. And over time, I think that's the perfect setting for Jim Harbaugh, is in college. And maybe that's the same thing for EB. Maybe his personality is better suited for the college game, where he's not dealing with grown men yelling. You can't be yelling at grown men all the damn time and not winning. That's the key. Like, Bill Belichick probably yells all the time, but if you're winning, you're going to suck the shit up because you get results. It's a results-based business. But you can't be yelling at grown-ass men all the time, and then we go out there and we get our asses kicked, and you're still yelling at us, but the shit you're yelling isn't yielding any results. And so that's the one thing Jim Harbaugh has been able to do. He's been able to produce results. But over time, when you're dealing with grown men, that wears thin if you're not winning championships. And Jim Harbaugh, for all the success he's had wherever he's been, it hasn't yielded him any championships, whether it's Stanford, whether it's Michigan, whether it's 49ers. He's had success in every single one of those spots, but it hasn't yielded them a national championship at Stanford or at Michigan. It hasn't yielded a Super Bowl, even though he went to one and went to another NFC championship game. It still didn't yield him a championship. And so at the end of the day, if you're not winning the ultimate prize, guys get fed up. So I think Eric Bieniemy probably falls into that category. But I would have, if anything, I'd like to see if he was a leader of men. Could he have galvanized these guys down the stretch for the final 5 games? But that's no here nor there. It's not going to happen, clearly, with this firing of Jack Del Rio and Brent Vieselmeyer. So it is what it is. Nothing's changed for me. The offseason is still going to be one of the biggest in this franchise's history. I think it has to pale in comparison to last offseason, when you got rid of the most toxic owner in NFL history in Daniel Snyder. But I think it's going to be the second biggest year in this organization's history, because the direction of this team for the next 5 years is going to be essentially chosen. Whatever direction we're going to go in, it's going to be chosen by the guy they select to be the next general manager of this team. And then the guy that he hires as the head coach is probably going inside of that 5 years. That's going to control the next 3 to 5 years. If they pick the wrong coach, you're probably stuck with that guy for at least 2 years. He may get fired in that 3rd year, right? But again, if that's the case, then we're running in the same place, right? We're on that hamster wheel again, and you're going to be just as frustrated as you are now 3 years from now if they don't get the right coach in here. And if they don't get the right coach in here, that may be a reflection that the GM isn't worth the damn either. I mean, I think we'll more so pay attention to what players he brings in here and what this roster looks like versus, the coach that he selects. Because you could pick a guy, he'd be the wrong guy, pick the right guy after that, and you pick the right players, and that next guy comes in here and gets it going, right? So I think we're more going to focus on the GM for the players that he brings in here. You want him to get the right coach because that's important. But the players, if you don't have the right coaching staff and you got a really good group of players, and I don't think it really matters. I think we've seen that, because I don't think this roster is as bad as when the season started. I'll say this: the roster wasn't as bad when the season started as what we've seen. Obviously, you know, a few plays here, a few plays there, a few coaching decisions here, a few coaching decisions there, and this is a different team than 4-8. We could be 8-4 with a couple of plays made here or there and a couple of coaching decisions made here and there. Ronald goes for 2 in week 4 against Philadelphia, and we get it. It changes this entire season. We're not sitting here right now with a fired defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. We're not talking about a 45-10 ass thrashing on Thanksgiving if he just goes for 2 in week 4 against the Eagles, and we get it. If they call Terry McLaurin inbounds and they don't have enough visual proof to overturn it, we were going to score a touchdown on that drive. There's so many things that could have changed the complexity of this season, but it didn't, right? And whether it's a coaching decision or the referees screwed us or the players didn't get it done, we're sitting here at 4-8. And I'm telling you, with better coaching, we're probably not sitting here at 4-8. And it's not just the head coach. It's not just the defensive coordinator. It's not just the offensive coordinator. It's the combined group, right? It's all of them. Better coaching from everyone on this staff would have resulted in a much better record than 4-8. We're at where we're at now due to injuries, the trades that we made, and things of that nature. And then obviously some of the roster decisions, you know, not fortifying the offensive line, but instead going out and getting Andrew Wiley and Nick Gates and thinking that you solved something, right? Like that's a them problem, and it's put us where we are right now. That's part of the problem. So at the end of the day, I'm not here to talk your head off. I've already said way too much. I'm not overly moved. The needle hasn't been moved for me at all whatsoever. I'm not here telling you I'm excited Jack's gone, you know, that because again, part of the problem, none of the guys that are here are part of the solution. So he's not the only guy that needs to be fired. He's just the first one that got fired. But the rest of them will be joining him shortly. And the defense isn't going to be any better because Jack is gone. And now all of a sudden Ronald is calling the defense. If he thought he could fix this, he would have taken over a long time ago because his job is on the line. When he fired Eric Washington or demoted Eric Washington from defensive play caller and made himself the defensive play caller, he did it a lot sooner that year because he thought he could turn things around. He thought he could save his job. He already knows he's fired here, man. Ron's on borrowed time, and he knows it, which is why he's been talking the way that he's been talking for the last month and a half, talking about give me my Super Bowl ring if this roster is this. He already knows he's canned, man. He's done. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section, and we'll get out of here real quick. Barrett Downing, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Barrett Downing writes, Ron calling the D will be something to see. He knows he's walking that green mile, LOL. Which is why it doesn't really make a ton of sense for me. It doesn't really move the needle for me, per se, right? Like, he already knows he's walking that green mile. He knows his impending, death as a coach is coming, right? Like, there's an actual expiration date on his time here in Washington. His tenure is up. Whenever that last game, and I don't know the exact date, I know it's the first week of January. Whenever that last Sunday is, that Monday, maybe even that night after the game, but for sure that next day, that Monday, he's done, and he knows it. I don't really know what he's going to get done as a defensive coordinator. I'll just say this: if I'm Ronald, throw caution to the wind. I'm blitzing as much as I can. Damn it, if they beat me with the blitz, so what? What I'm not going to do is let Dak. The first thing that my dad said to me when I got home, when I got back to their house, I said, "Boss, I swear I asked you to take it easy on us." And he said, "Hey, man, I can't help you when you guys can't even get close to my quarterback." He was like, "Damn, he was back there building a house." I'm like, I tried to tell you that this is what it was going to be, right? So, if I'm Ronald, I can't let the next quarterback stand back there with all kinds of time to throw the football. You give two of that kind of time to find Tyreek Hill, good luck. You're going to need it. Al Butts, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Al Butts writes, Ron did what he was told to do by ownership on Thursday. Yeah, that is absolutely fact. If they're not going to fire Ron, they had to give up. I told you this was an ownership move. This wasn't Ronald sacrificing Jack. But I'm telling you, he planted the seed, because don't think for one second that he didn't talk to Josh Harris and company and they didn't already tell him, if this thing goes off the rails, we're going to have to do something. And that something is probably going to have to be Jack. Now, Brent Vieselmeyer probably was thrown in as a sweetener into that pot, because the Jack, I said Ronald laid the foundation at halftime talking about the defensive backs being too far off and stuff like that. So it's easy for you to connect the dots when they do it that way, right? I think the firing does matter to a degree, because I feel the players quit on Jack back in week 5. Let's see who will play hard here on. Okay, you know what? From that perspective, Al, you may be right. You know, I'm always thinking of things from the player's perspective. But you know what? You're probably right. And I didn't consider that. And you know what? That does make a difference, because we heard that there was a disturbance on the sidelines, right? During the game. We didn't see it. I would love to see some visual evidence of this. I'm going to try to watch the all-22s and maybe see if I can see something, you know, occurring on the side. But you're not going to be able to see it. If somebody had visual proof of this, it would already be out on the internet. So, but we heard after the game that there was a little bit of a fracas on the sidelines, a little disagreement between, you know, players and some of the staff members. Jack was involved, Eric Bieniemy was involved, and some of the players were involved. And so maybe that's part of the reason Jack had to go. They couldn't coexist for the final 5 games, whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. Maybe the players did give up on Jack. Maybe. I can't say that for certain, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out. And maybe this did matter to the players. So we'll see. That is something to consider, Al. I'm glad you did bring that up. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, hey, Lou, hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, Chris. Likewise. As always, man. Appreciate you and the support. He says, 2 questions. 1, what positions would you focus on in free agency to address before the 2024 draft? And 2, even having how much further are we compared to 2020 in terms of being a top team in the NFC? We're probably right back where we were. Now, I will say this. The roster isn't as bad. We didn't have, you know, I mean, it's funny because when you look at the players that we had heading into the 2020 draft and then to that 2020 offseason, it's the same guys. It's Terry McLaurin, it's Jonathan Allen, it's Deron Payne, but we feel a little bit different about those players now. They're a little bit older, they're a little bit wiser, they're probably better players now than they were then. And I think you have a Sam Cosmi to add to that mix, who I think is a good player that you can continue to develop and grow with. You know, there's some other players. They're not many. Like you still, and what we have to understand, like a lot of people want a lot of players gone, and I'm like, all these guys aren't going to be superstars, and you're not going to be able to turn this roster over and find them. But like, Jamin Davis is a quality linebacker. Like you can do some good things with him, right? You get the right scheme in here, you get the right coach that utilizes Jamin Davis's strengths. And Jamin can be a solid linebacker. He'll never live up to the first round draft pick. You just get that out of your mind. But if he can play like a 3rd round pick, that's solid for us. You need players like that, right? You can't get rid of everybody, right? Kendall Fuller is a guy that I would love to have back. You know, Benjamin St-Juste is solid. I think if you utilize him correctly, you put him in positions to succeed, I think he could be a really solid corner, right? Like there's solid football. We don't know what Emmanuel Forbes is right now, right? You know, and Cam Curl, really good football player. If the price is right, I'd love to have him back. He's one of those guys that you can do really good things with. Right scheme. He's the right place, right time type of player. He's usually where he's supposed to be. Smart. You need those kind of guys, right? I'm not trying to break the bank to keep him because he's not a playmaker. However, he's a smart player, and you need those guys on the back end of your defense, kind of controlling things on the back end. You know? I think Defoe's a good player. I know this hasn't been a great season for him. He wasn't making any plays, but he was where he was supposed to be when he was supposed to be there. He's a solid tackler. He flies around. He's got speed. We've seen him play really well. We know what he's capable of when he's clicking on all cylinders. I think there's some pieces here. Like a lot of people love to just demean the stuff that's here because they've been a part of the losing. But part of that is they're good football players, but they're in a scheme that maybe doesn't fit their skill set, or they're not being utilized properly. And so whatever the case may be. You can see talent. You know talent when you see talent. As a fan, as somebody watching who's watched football, who watches other teams around, you know the players that can play in this league and get it done. And Benjamin St-Juste can play in this league. Is he a top flight corner? Hell no, but we never said he was supposed to be. They got him going up against the other team's best receiver every week. That should never be the case. That's not who he is as a defensive back. That's not who he is as a corner, But if you put him on the other team's number 2, I think he can play well, right? But again, it's just about how you scheme it up. I think there are some talented guys that you can bring along for the ride that can help this team moving forward. Even guys in reserve roles like Cornelius Lucas, I think he's the kind of guy I would want. I can't speak for anybody else. I want Cole Luke. If he's not starting, he's the perfect quintessential swing tackle in this league. I'd want him back. I know that much. Andrew Wiley, it sucks that we spent, any money on him. And it's not a lot. It's not like it break the bank type of money. But I'd love to experiment to see what he looks like at guard next year, right? Maybe you don't have to overspend on guard, or you don't have to go out and spend anything in the draft early on, draft capital-wise. We don't know what Ricky Stromberg is. We don't know what Quan Martin really is. Like, it's a lot of young stuff that we still have yet to really dive into because, for whatever reason, whether they got guys in front of them, they've been banged up in the case of Ricky Stromberg. Like, it's hard to really assess what you have to have. We know what this team needs, but what are some have-to-have positions? You got to have a new left tackle, right? Got to have it. We probably need at least one guard, but do you have to have a guard? If Wiley can play guard inside and be a quality, solid, guard at left guard, I don't know. We don't know. Do you need a center? I'm not sure. Ricky Stromberg, can he play it or not? I'm not sure. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But we don't know. That's why I was like, man, I want Ricky out there. But again, don't know the extent of his injury. Don't know if he'll even be back this season. But it'd be nice if he could play the final 4 games of the season so we can get a sort of a feel for, all right, we need a center, we need a guard, we need a tackle, we need a tight end, TE1. We need, a faster back, a change of pace back. Antonio Gibson probably not going to be here. So we need one of those, right? You could even say, well, I'm not going to give up on Chris Rodriguez, but I'm not the biggest Chris Rodriguez fan, but he's fine. He's on a rookie contract. You don't need to do anything rash there, but you do need a speed back, right? Change of pace guy. You need a punt returner. So whether, you bring back Bieniemy, who's got 1 more year left on his rookie contract, or you move on from him. I want Curtis Samuel back. That's another guy. I want him back. You got Jahan Dotson. You got Curtis Samuel. Terry McLaurin. There are a number of pieces that weren't here before that are here now that you feel good about, but it's hard to say what I would do in free agency because I haven't looked at free agency yet. I told you over the next 3 to 4 weeks, that's what I'm going to be focusing in on, is starting to look at free agents, looking at the GM pool, looking at the head coaching candidacy pool, looking at all of these things that I haven't been, because I'm locked in during the regular season. I'm not thinking about the offseason when actual games are being played. But now that we know the season is done, and there's nothing really to be gained here other than guys getting experience and seeing who's going to potentially be here for next year and moving forward, that now I can start focusing in on some of that, off-season clerical stuff. So we'll get to that. But I got to see what's available in free agency first before I can give you a definitive answer. Like, hey, like last year, I told you, once I had a chance to sit down and look at the linebacker, I was like, yo, I would attack linebacker in free agency, I told you guys the 2 positions I would have attacked in free agency last year were linebacker and offensive line. I thought there were a couple of offensive linemen that they could have gone after. They went after other guys, and that's fine. Didn't work out, but I would have attacked also tight end last year in free agency if at all possible. I didn't expect, Mike Gesicki to get a 1-year, $5 million deal. I didn't expect Dalton Schultz to get a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. I didn't expect these guys to sign for peanuts on the dollar, right? For pennies on the dollar, for peanuts, essentially. So could have done that last year too, but it is what it is. Well, I'll take a look at the, free agency pool, and then you'll be able to decide then what's what. You know what I'm saying? As far as having how much further, just having a quarterback gives you a chance. We didn't have a quarterback. We had Dwayne Haskins heading into 2020. We had Kyle Allen. These were the guys we were parading around as our, quarterbacks heading into 2020. you got to feel a lot better about where we sit. You just, if we are able to turn this around quick, part of that is going to be because Sam Howell continues to develop his quarterback. But we know the talent that he possesses and what he's going to be able to do. If we put the surrounding cast around him, he can be a top flight quarterback in this league. So that changes everything, because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a leg to stand on. You look at Atlanta, they don't have a quarterback right now, right? I don't know what their season, what's going to become of their season, but they don't have a quarterback. The Vikings don't know what they're going to do with quarterback right now. Kirk Cousins is on the last year of his deal. He just tore his ACL. They don't know what they're going to do, right? Detroit, they're hanging in there, and they got Jared Goff, but they drafted Hendon Hooker for a reason, right? So we'll see. We could go through the entire conference. The Rams are struggling at quarterback with Matthew Stafford, who's on his last legs as a starter in this league. The Cardinals are having some decisions that they'll have to make. They'll be in the top 5 more likely than not with their draft pick. Do they move on from Kyler Murray? That contract is pretty much unmovable at this point. So they probably don't have a choice but to move forward with Kyler Murray. But Seattle's got Geno Smith, and that's cool. But Geno's Geno, right? There's only so far you can go with Geno Smith. And so I could look around the entire conference, and you'd probably say, you know what? Our quarterback's the 6th or the 7th best quarterback in the conference, all things considered. And if that's the case, now you build the rest of the roster up, and then you can move him up that list. If they provide the things around him that he needs, and he gets good coaching, good solid coaching that can grow with him, he can easily rise up that list 2-3 years from now. We could be talking about we got the 3rd or the 2nd best quarterback in the conference, right? Because right now it's just Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Jalen Hurts that stand out in the conference. That's it. Like the Giants don't have a quarterback. We could go through all of this. So I think it does give us an advantage that we got our guy. But, we'll see what happens. Frankie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I agree that this probably doesn't change anything on the field this season, but when players are fighting your coaches on the sideline, something has to give. If we are focusing on player development right now, can't have it. You're right. And same thing Al said earlier, and it's something that I didn't consider. And so shout out to you guys for bringing that up, because I didn't even cross my mind that the players were, fed up and they were upset with the way things were going. And when you got players on the sideline disgruntled and you got things going on like that on the side, something has to give. And the easiest thing to do is you can't get rid of 5-6 players at one time, but what you can do is get rid of one coach, right? Or 2 coaches in this case. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You guys are absolutely spot on. And this is why I love you guys, because you always make sure that the full picture is in focus. Sometimes I can narrow that focus and just zoom in. And I was zooming in on the fan base. This is what we wanted, or what you guys wanted, right? And some of you are like, no, got to open that lens up a bit, widen that picture, because it's not just the fans. These players are upset too. And you're right, that something maybe needed to be done. And they did that maybe for the sake of keeping continuity amongst the players in that locker room. So Chris Devers, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy CD writes, Dak had to bless you all. Had 350 on this. Who was dumb enough to bet you 350? Hopefully you had that on a betting app or something. Because if somebody was dumb enough, or a number of people collectively or dumb enough to bet you to total up 350, they deserve to lose their money. They might as well have just given you the money before the game, honestly. Nate Master, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, can Ron be back next year as DC if the defense improves? No. First of all, if you've been a head coach for over a decade in the league, are you willing to take a demotion to defensive coordinator on the same team that you were the head coach of? Heck no, you're not going to be willing to do that. And number 2, he's not in control of that, right? The next GM comes in here, he hires a coach. If that coach wants nothing to do with Ronald, then he shouldn't have to be forced to take Ronald on. It's one thing to be forced to take a player. It's another thing to be forced to take a coach that you don't want on your staff. So again, you can work those things out though, because if you're going to hire somebody, you can tell them, hey, look, this is a part of the job. Like if I'm going through the process with a GM, hey, Sam Howell's a part of this deal. If you don't believe in Sam, you're not going to give him the resources, this isn't the job for you, right? And if that guy comes in and says, no, I think this kid can play. I really like him. I think we can build around him. Then that's the kind of guy you want taking this job. But no matter what this defense does down the stretch, Ron's done in any capacity. He's done. There's no way he can be back. Abel Ambrosio, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, with JDR being fired, now what? And cool fathead, NHO. And there's no now what. You just finish out the season. That's my point. Is you made my point. Is okay, he's fired. Now what? There's nothing else here to see. He got fired. We still going to suck on defense. We're still going to be, offense that's inconsistent. You got to hope you beat one or two teams. Maybe you don't hope you beat one or two teams down the stretch so you get a high draft pick, right? At the end of the day, this changes nothing. That's my point. That's what I've been trying to say for the last 30 minutes is this changes nothing, right? Thank you. In terms of the fathead, yeah, I mean, who didn't have one of those back in the day? I'm one of many who probably have one of those in their room. And you know what it is. It's definitely NHO. Let's see. New How order. Yeah, you already know what it is. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the comment section. John Perez writes, getting rid of the DC was the next best thing if Ronald was staying until season's end. I'll gladly take linebackers or DBs coaches my next DC. Look, at the end of the day, they had to do something. It felt like after a 45-10 slacking where they planned to eat turkey and they're throwing the iconic Dwayne Wade, LeBron James alley-oop into the Salvation Army bell. You had to know something. Like they were having way too much fun. They planned our assassination on television. Like when they planned a celebration, they wouldn't have done that against Philadelphia. They knew they were going to have a chance to get to that Salvation Army bell, and he was going to have a chance to eat that turkey leg. If that shit doesn't infuriate, like that's the thing that I walked away saying, man, like that's the ultimate sign of disrespect. When they planning shit on you during the week, instead of them focusing in, this is a short, condensed week. Instead of them focusing in on trying to beat us, they focused in on what celebrations they gonna do because they already know they gonna whoop our ass. If that shit don't get your blood boiling, you ain't no damn competitor. Like I'm pissed off and I didn't even play a single snap. That shit got me hot under the goddamn collar. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, don't be mad when we end 9-8. Not saying still fired. Metaphor, I don't know what kind of world you're living in, bro, but it's a fantasy one. You got to let it go. You've been still trying to talk that 10-7. Now you keep lowering the bar, now 9-8. You got to let it go, Metaphor. This season is going nowhere fast, my friend. We're not winning no more than 1 or 2 games max. If we get to 6, it's a miracle. Okay? The number for me is 5 right now. 5-12 is where this team is going to end up this year. That's what I see. Beating the Rams is probably about it. If Aaron Rodgers comes back and on Christmas Eve, we're not beating the Jets. If he doesn't, maybe we beat the Jets. But at this rate, if they leave Tim Boyle out there, by the time we'll turn Tim Boyle into a household name like we did with Tommy DeVito. So all they need is to just hold on until we come to town, and we'll turn Tim Boyle into a folk hero for the final 3 games of the season. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, I'm salivating over a top 5 pick with this roster. Man, getting a top 5 pick is painful. I've been there before. 2019 was painful, bro. But I guess the hardest part has already come because we've already acknowledged that the season is over now. And, we got like in 19, there was really nothing other than maybe, I guess, Dwayne, but I never wanted Dwayne Haskins. May he rest in peace. I never wanted him. So, I tried to be excited about Dwayne, but I couldn't really be because I didn't want him in the first place. I didn't think he was going to be any good. With Sam, I know Sam's going to be good, and I guess it'll be heartbreaking to watch him struggle if this team continues to struggle. I just need the offense to play better. And I don't have a lot of confidence in Eric Bieniemy as a play caller to make that happen necessarily. just the consistency of it, I guess. Sam's going to have to make some stuff happen. You know, he's going to have to make some throws, and he's going to have to be a little bit better than he was. He missed some throws in that Cowboys game that could have helped this team a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just want to see the offense play better. I want to see Sam play better. I want to see him finish this season off strong. That's what I'm really aiming for at this point. So maybe the top 5 pick comes whether we want it or not. Just do it. I want it to look a certain way, I guess. I guess that's what I'm aiming for. Is I want it to look a certain way. Mama Commander got them yams. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. He says, what do you think about Marvin Harrison Jr. and O-line both in the second? Well, Marvin Harrison Jr., you'd have to spend the top 5 pick on him. He'll be gone in the first 5 picks. Assuming that the first 2 picks are quarterbacks, more likely than not, he'll probably be the 3rd player, maybe 4th player off the board in this draft. He won't fall out of the top 5. I can assure you of that. For me, if you got to choose between a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. or a left tackle, I'm taking a left tackle. I'm sorry. We can find another receiver down the road to help. Our receiving core isn't desolate. Like, you take Marvin Harrison Jr. where you don't have a bona fide stud 1, but you still don't even have a number 2, because he can elevate other guys when you get him, right? We got guys that can be a number 1. If you don't think Terry's a 1 or whatever, that's fine. Getting Marvin Harrison would be excellent, but you still have a void at left tackle that needs to be filled. And I would much rather fill that void with a first round top 10, top 2-3 tackle prospect in the draft class type of selection and go after a receiver down the road than fill that with a Sam Cosmic type guy in the second round and end up finding out that this guy's probably more suited to play guard. Not that you can't find a good tackle in the 2nd, 3rd, or even the 4th round, because you can. Other teams have. But I'd prefer to just try to find a Trent Williams in the top 10, if at all possible. That's what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? Let me find a what's the Eagles' right tackle name? Why am I blanking on his name? Let me see if I can't find one of those dudes in the first round. Is essentially what I'm trying to get after. So Marvin Harrison is cool, but we need a left tackle, man. We need to protect Sam. That's the biggest thing that we can do is fortify this offensive line. And like I said, if the first 2 picks are tackle and guard, I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about it one bit. You know, we need defensive ends. We need 2 of those minimum. One, if you get 1 in free agency and 1 in the draft, cool. If you get 2 in free agency, cool. But the likelihood is you need to get 2 in the draft, because I'm really not trying to spend a ton of money on a pass rusher. And if you're gonna spend money on a pass rusher, you're gonna have to pay top dollar. Pass rusher is one of those positions. I'd like to add a guy like Bryce Huff, if he's available. I don't know what his free agency situation is, how much longer he's going to be in with, but he's a hell of a pass rusher, but if you get him, based off of, what he's done, you might have to pay him a little bit more than what you would be looking to pay. Right. But man, you just need guys like that. You hope to find somebody like that in the draft. That's what you hope. But anyway, I digress. Mike Lowry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Mike? Let's thank Ronaldo and co for all they've done to change the culture. Definitely looking forward to the next regime. Salute. And a lot of people have even questioned, what did he actually do to change the culture? I felt like he's changed the culture here, even if it's just the fact that how people look at us, right? They may look at the product on the field as a joke, but they're not looking at us off the field as a joke. And Ronald had a lot to do with that, whether you want to admit it or not. But most of us as fans don't really care about the perception of this team off the field as much as we do on the field. But you got to understand, from where we came from, off the field matters not just as much as on the field, but it matters a whole hell of a lot, right? We had a really bad rap. Our persona as an organization took a nosedive for 25 years because of Daniel Snyder. So Ronald came in the last 4 years with Bruce Allen and Vinny Serrato and all the laughing stocks that had us looking like, the worst organization in sports. Ron gave this organization a face, one that you could be proud of, if nothing else, that you could trot out in front of the cameras and say, hey, we're not a bad organization. This guy is a good dude. People respect him, and you should look at Washington a little bit different. That's what Ron's role was here. Thought he did a really good job of playing his role and his position. And if nothing else, I'll salute him for that and for finding Sam Howell. Even though he wasn't going to play him in the season finale last year, he still drafted him in the 5th round. He didn't have to do that. He could have went all in on Carson Wentz and continued to try to build the roster around Wentz. And he took a guy that was sitting there in the 5th round that he didn't have to. So give him credit for that as well. Nate Master, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, will EB be gone next year? He's been awful or mid. Yeah, he'll be gone. He's done too. Nobody is going to survive on this staff. I don't think there's, not even like Randy Jordan, who I think survived the last regime and ended up here with Ronald and company. I don't even think Randy, and I like Randy a lot. Jennifer King, all of them. I love that whole crew, right? You know, Ryan Kerrigan and Jeff Scanina. You know, Kerrigan is a fan favorite. You'd love to see him. I don't think none of those dudes are surviving. Nobody. Jennifer King, she's not surviving either. I don't think anybody's going to make it. He's going to be an all new cast of characters next year, as you know, coaches, play callers, etc., etc. So yeah, EB's on borrowed time. But you know, I think what he's effectively done is maybe he's strengthened his offensive coordinator resume. I had a Bears fan hit me up the other day, was like, yo, we'll take him off your hands if you don't want him. I'm like, he's all yours. It's better than the shit that the Bears have, right? Their offensive coordinator stinks. So if a team like the Bears with a quarterback like Justin Fields, I'm like, I don't know if you're in a position to have Justin Fields dropping back and slinging that bitch 43 times. Justin Fields don't strike me as a quarterback that's prepared to sling that bitch 43 times a game. I don't really know if you know what you get. Like, that's the funny part about people who haven't been paying close attention to what Washington's doing. They just know EB's name, and they look at, you know, what we've done offensively at times this season, whether it's the 2 Eagles games or, you know, the Broncos game. You see a couple of highlights and you're thinking to yourself, man, we could use a guy like that. They don't know what's really going on out here. You really want, if Justin Fields is your quarterback, and again, they may go get one of these other quarterbacks. You know, they'll be number 1 overall. Carolina's not winning another game. They may be in a position to draft Caleb Williams. Okay, well, if you're comfortable with Caleb Williams throwing it 42 times just about every week, and maybe he's equipped to deal with that and he's ready for that. But if it's Justin Fields, I can tell you Fields is not prepared to throw it 43 times. You really don't want this smoke. But maybe somebody else out there will see what EB did this year and they'll be willing to take a chance on him. I don't know. But he's not going to be back here, I can tell you that. Ronald Rivera and Eric Bieniemy, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Lou, why y'all trying to get us fired? We got kids. So do we as fans. We got kids, and we tired of watching this shit. So unless you could have made it better and you didn't, hey, y'all made enough money. Don't worry. Y'all are fine. Your kids are fine. Most of your kids are grown. It ain't about your kids. You know, it's about your kids at this point, and all of them are fine. Okay? Our kids are not fine. They're scarred like their parents from watching this shit that you didn't fix. So sorry, but not sorry. Y'all got to go. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me. That was the last comment. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T here on this quick impromptu video. I wanted to just come in here, kind of address the news of yesterday. I didn't want to not say anything, right? But I'm just telling y'all, it didn't do anything for me. And I know it did something for some of y'all. It ain't got nothing to do like with the changes that are going to come in the offseason. It's just something to appease. But you know what? I do think some of you brought up brilliant points about the players like being fed up with some of the decisions and the way things were being taught and coached or whatever. And for the sake of those players finishing out the season strong and maybe, you know, creating an environment that is one that is conducive for them finishing the season in a strong manner, maybe changes had to be made. And so they have. But in any event, I digress. You guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. And we will come back and we will do this on the other side of the weekend on Monday. And we will reset the table and reconfigure everything. And I guess get back to some level of normalcy with this and start preparing for the Dolphins. And again, we'll start kind of taking a peek. See, I guess one eye is on the season, the rest of the season, the final 5 games, and the other eye, I guess, is off into the offseason. I guess that's how the rest of this thing is going to play out. So I guess we'll start kind of looking at some of the things that this team will have at their disposal this offseason, including, you know, the free agency pool of players that will be available. Obviously, that's going to change with franchise tags and guys re-signing and things of that nature, but we'll take a look at some of that stuff. The coaching candidacy pool, the GM candidacy pool, all of that stuff. I guess we'll start to take a look at a lot of that. You know, why not, right? Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, peace.